Time to talk transfers. Look at what's going on in the market. Anil Kandola joins us, part of our top team on the transfers. Hi, Anil.
A very good afternoon to you, gentlemen. Yeah, it's certainly getting to the strong stage of the transfer window, shall we say. Of course, a lot of teams returning for pre-season, so a lot of teams will want to get their business done as soon as possible, and we're really seeing that now with some of the names I'm sure we're about to discuss.
Well, the Gykeres deal, I mean, they're still, apparently Arsenal still sorting out the finer points with Sporting. It's not been an easy process, but it looks like they're going to get this done pretty soon.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's been an easy process in quite a number of ways, really, if I'm being honest. In terms of obviously his current situation at Sporting Lisbon, he obviously had the desire to go. There was this idea of a gentleman's agreement. When we're in 2025, I'm not sure how much weight that holds, this so-called handshake agreement. We'll let you go at a certain price, etc., etc. But it seems, of course, that Gykeres, as I said, it probably ended a little bit sour with Sporting Lisbon. But as our chief football correspondent here at talkSPORT, Alex Cook, has reported for quite some time now, Viktor Gyökeres has made it clear to his friends, family, and his surrounding camp of agents and all alike that Arsenal will probably be the one club that he does end up, and that's the one club that he's always wanted. And I think from an Arsenal perspective, look, if you have a player who's very sought after, there have been a number of clubs who have looked at this individual, and for him to make it very clear that this is the project that he wants to join, I think is very exciting. And yeah, terms, as we understand, have been agreed from his side on a 5-year deal. This has always been the project that has attracted him the most out of all the potential options. And yeah, amongst some of the names like Ruben Amorim at Manchester United, no, he didn't want to join his former manager. It's Arsenal and Mikel Arteta. So we do expect this deal, this big deal, this saga almost to come to an end for Arsenal. They will very, very soon, probably this week, in fact, get their striker through the door.
It says a bit about United, doesn't it? Because they pay top wage, and the fact they still didn't want to go there.
No, John Duran, it didn't last long at Al Nassr in Saudi. He's gone on loan to Fenabach. Apparently, from what we understand, really did struggle to settle, and what was going on in his personal life affected the way things were on field. So they've obviously both decided to sort of cut their losses.
Yeah, of course, there was a lot of excitement when this deal was happening at the time. The fact that Saudi Arabia and Al Nassr in particular could get their hands on a really, really exciting and young striker. I think that was the real key element for the Saudi Arabian side to pursue this individual. But yeah, John Duran, it's the season. He's on loan now. He's in Turkey. And if you put that into perspective, at age just 21, he's had experience in the MLS. He's had experience in Saudi Arabia, Turkey as well now, and of course England. So I think despite it being a bit of a difficult one, I think this can really highlight exactly what would be attractive of going to Saudi Arabia if you were a youngster. Just because you go there, that doesn't mean you're in the twilight years of your career. You can earn a lot of money and still return at a very decent level of football. So yeah, John Duran will be playing the remainder of the season in Turkey.
What's going on with Langanger at the moment, Anil? Where are we at with that?
Yeah, this one I think will certainly be one to keep your eye on over the next few days, especially this week. Newcastle, as we understand it, have seen a £45 million bid rejected for the Nottingham Forest player. It seems that all parties are very relaxed about the situation. Langanger, very different to his Swedish counterpart in Viktor Gyökeres. He's not pushing for a move. He's not desperate. He hasn't made it clear that he wants to leave the project currently in Nottingham Forest, who are, of course, in Europe for the first time in a very long time. So he is obviously a very key part to that team. And ultimately, if Newcastle do come in with a higher bid, we do expect this one to go through. But I think they're probably around the £10 million mark away from a deal that Forest will be very happy with. In excess of over 60 million is probably where they'd like to begin the discussion at least. But yeah, Anthony Langanger very high up in Newcastle's wish list. But I do think it has been a very frustrating time for Eddie Howe. Of course, Brian Mbeumo was a name amongst others that Newcastle have been interested in, seem to have missed out on him as well. So yeah, I think this one will be a really welcomed addition to Eddie Howe's project at Newcastle. Of course, the fact that they've got European football again on their minds, I think this will be a really welcomed addition in that forward line.
A lot of Newcastle fans trying to read into the fact that he's not back at Forest pre-season training today, but apparently the word in Nottingham was that was always the case. He was given an extended leave of absence, so I don't think there's anything to read into that, but we shall see.
I do think by the start of the season, all the top clubs, especially the Champions League clubs, they'll all have got players. In fact, the whole of the league, that's what makes the Premier League what it is, really. You know, so some clubs take longer to do their business, but there's...
Such as Spurs, which is what we come on to now with Mohammed Kudus, and apparently the word from West Ham is be a bit more realistic than 50 million quid for Mohammed Kudus. I don't think they're going to get anywhere near the 85. So I don't quite know where we're at with this, but is there a feeling that they'll get a deal done?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't go so far to say that West Ham were offended by this offer, but I don't think they were particularly enamoured by it. So I think, as you've already alluded to there, Tottenham will have to up their game in terms of a price tag in order to get their desired man through the door. I do think, as we've already alluded to today, that, you know, there's still a bit of time to get people through the door, but I think this one will be something that Tottenham do revisit with a higher bid. Of course, this is just classic transfer negotiations. The club who want to buy will start at a little bit less than they're willing to pay, and the club that are going to sell will always add an extra 15-20 million just to give yourself a bit of wiggle room when it comes to negotiations. But yeah, Mohammed Kudus, a player that Tottenham do want through the door. Of course, Thomas Frank looking to make a big splash, not just on the pitch but also financially, as we're seeing now with Mohammed Kudus. So yeah, I think this one will be again another one to watch as we go through the week, because Tottenham are starting to make their movements, and rightly so, because Thomas Frank, he does have a big job on his hands.
And we heard today that Callum Wilson is leaving Newcastle, and Andy's response to that was, and I quote, "He's got West Ham written all over him." That may or may not be true. We'll find out. Yeah, but anyway, because of that, it seems that Newcastle was showing an interest in Dominic CalvertLewin, and he could be potentially heading there from Everton. I mean, look, he had a really injury hit couple of seasons, but there is definitely a player there.
Worth a punt
if you can keep him fit. I suppose it's the nature of the contract, but it's an interesting one, Anil.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, in an ideal world, I know we of course don't operate like this in reality, but if you could say that Dominic Calvert-Lewin would be guaranteed to stay fit all season, I think there would be a lot more suitors than we're seeing at the moment. But of course, the injury record is something that haunts him. It's a very difficult situation for a club to take the risk on at the end of the day. You know, despite his ability, we saw probably in particular the season or the time under Carlo Ancelotti, what he could really provide. He's popped up with some big moments at Everton. He's been there for quite a long time now. But yeah, he's available on a free transfer, which I think opens the door certainly to a few more clubs being attracted to this proposition. And from what we understand, Newcastle boss Eddie Howe has been a big admirer of Dominic Calvert-Lewin for a long time. And, you know, I think this will really highlight the idea and the notion that if you can play under the right manager who understands you, who appreciates you, and also realises that you may not be fit for the whole of the season and really provide a confident environment for someone to blossom in, then we could potentially see the best of Calvert-Lewin again. So yeah, like I said, there's so much going on. Of course, as I've already said, you know, the fact that pre-season is upon us now, clubs are arriving back to training, and they really want to make sure that they get enough time as they can with their new signings to really bed them in. But whatever happens with Calvert-Lewin, with Kudus, with all of the names that we've mentioned, we'll be across it on talkSPORT.
Nice one. Cheers, Anil. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your show. Take care, guys.
Anil Kandola there. Keep an eye on that. As Anil just said, we're right across that for you. The Transfer Insiders podcast is on the talkSPORT app, wherever you get your podcasts, and you can head over to talksport.com. Check out the live blog with all the transfer news.
Paul Hakwsbee and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons 1 till 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.